Big Finish have made many spooky Big Finish stories, from the Holy Terror, Night Forts, spare parts for Silver Turk, but we thought we'd go right back to an era what was renowned for its horror, and this is Big Finish's celebration of said era. The Phillip Hinchcliffe Presents, known for gothic horror stories. Today, we're going to be taking a look at two of these gothic horror stories, The Ghost of Growlstead and The Devil's Armada.
Probably the most gothic horror stories of the Philip Hinchcliffe Presents range, I feel.
Yes.
But these are gothic horror through and through. You got some Victorian England shenanigans with these creatures from another world ending up in freak shows and such. And then you have more creatures from another
And
world being
demons and
mistaken
imps.
for, yeah, and tricking people into thinking that witches are real. They're both very much the same vibe.
Yeah,
You-
yeah.
You've not got the variety in tone with this box set, which I don't think is a bad thing necessarily. I
No, because
think
I
they
think this,
complement each other quite nicely, but don't contrast each other as such.
yeah, I mean, I think this box set we've said in a previous video where this was an event. The Fourth Doctor had mainly been in the hour format, so this was an exciting prospect having a six-part and a four-part. So I think we just latched onto that and enjoyed the world that Philip Hinchcliffe and Mark Platt created with these two stories.
We've spoken a lot about Ghosts of Growlstead before.
Yes.
So I want to, before we go back into battle territory, I want to have a quick chat about Devil's Armada. I
Mm-hmm.
think, we'll do it. We'll mix it up a bit.
Let's,
Do it
let's
in
be,
a different
oh,
order.
we're going to scare you. This is a scare because we're not doing it chronologically.
Oh, no.
Oh, I think
Yeah, on my shelf, I have the discs flipped the other way.
Terror, pain. I think Devil's Armada is my favorite of the set.
I agree. I think part one of Devil's Armada in particular
Mm, I love
is,
the
yeah,
atmosphere to this. I think there's a wonderful thing what Mark Platt does. I think he really gets this wonderful, colourful language, what's
mm,
very appropriate to the period, and you just feel very immersed in, you know, Tudor England.
yeah, I agree. I think the the dialogue really sparks. There's a lot of characters in here,
Mm-hmm.
but I don't feel lost between the characters. I think they
Mm.
all have a particular voice and a place in this world.
Yeah.
You're going through quite a few different echelons of society throughout this story, but I never felt myself wondering, wait, what was that character? Who were they? I think they're
Mm-hmm.
all quite distinct from each other and well defined, both in the writing and in the voices of the actors portraying them as well. I mean, Tom even gets to put on a different voice in this one as it goes a bit
Yes.
West Country for the
I
a little gag in part one.
I think with Tom there's this wonderful ferocity to his doctor within this, but
Yeah, I was going to mention there's a nice contrast there from that comedy to some other scenes, which I'm sure you'll mention now.
yeah, because you've got obviously the witch trials and the doctor sort of um, properly attacking, the views of the time. And I think this is a beautiful thing with this story, but it plays with the paranoia of,
Mm,
witchcraft and Catholics and the imps feeding off that. And you've got the doctor, really sort of kind of berating, this sort of the society they're in. You've got him going to, get hung, drawn, and quartered, but he's willing to pet the horse and say goodbye to the horse. But there's this, ferocity to the Doctor in it, which is quite different, I feel. Kind of the seed of doom, you know, things are going to hit the fan, so I'm going to be deadly serious now.
yeah, there's a wonderful element of Tom's performance in how he can flip instantly between those two. And you got
Mm.
some warm scenes with Leela as well, and some other characters as he comforts them. But cross him, and you will feel the sharp edge of his tongue in this one.
Yeah.
And I think it's one of Tom's greatest performances for Big Finish, if not ever.
There's a different energy to Tom within this. You can tell that he's really engaging with the material.
Hmm.
I think that that's a good sign. You're like, oh, if he's engaging with it, I'm really going to engage with it.
I think it's engaging with him in the way that Philip Hinchcliffe's era engaged with him back then.
Yes.
It's not that sort of Graham Williams GNT. Oh, I'll send it up. I could be funny here.
Mhm.
You know, it's giving him funny moments, nevertheless, but they don't feel, like Tom's trying to make people laugh with
He's not
him. If that
overcompensating because the script isn't there to support.
Yeah, exactly. He's laughing with the script rather than at it, perhaps, is
Yes,
the way
that's it.
to look at this one. And I mean, Louise Jameson as well, putting in a brilliant performance as Leela.
Yeah, I think this really used. I think both stories actually use the sort of hunter aspect of a character very well because she's
Hmm.
very much sort of locating the imps. She's the one who sort of gets a first glimpse of them, their
Yeah, she's much more
senses.
in tune with the world around her, isn't she?
Yes, yeah.
I mean, the imps are perhaps one of the weaker parts of this story once you properly get into it.
Mm.
I feel like, particularly Vituperon, the head imp, it sort of gets a bit too talky with
Mm.
him. I think they lose their menace as the story goes on. They're much better earlier on when they're laughing and cackling in the shadows, manipulating things from afar. Like talky moments between the Doctor and Vituperon that work for me. Like
Yeah.
particularly a scene where they're both riding on a cart together and the Doctor's getting all sorts of vegetable matter thrown at him
Yes.
while he's on his way to the gallows. But yeah, I think there's other scenes that
It's the
don't really
backstory,
work,
isn't it?
particularly towards the ending. Yeah, it's very plunk exposition dump. I also think there's an odd editing to both these stories.
Hmm.
It's something that has always been there for me. I've always felt it, but it finally clicked with me on this recent listen of it just feels like there's some scenes missing to show that passage of time. Like you'll have characters be halfway across England, then turn up in the next scene,
Yeah.
you know, in London, and you'll be thinking, okay, I get that, time has passed, but you almost needed something in between, either a scene rearranged or just another scene. I don't want to say pad it out because that makes it feel like I want a meaningless scene in there for no reason. But it just feels like there's quite a few moments throughout this story where something else needed to be there just to make it flow a bit smoother. It doesn't feel like breakneck pacing throughout the story. It doesn't feel like the story is rushing itself, but it feels very inconsistent in its pace.
I think
But
it's midway through part four. This story loses me because you get the great sort of epic soundscape of the English verse for Spanish Armada and the Doctor and Leela caught in the middle of that as they're on like the burning ship.
yeah, I mean, that's another moment of the story that just feels like it goes by too fast. I
Yeah.
mean, it's on the cover of disc 5 for this, and yet it feels like it doesn't have a chance to breathe within the story, the whole Armada section.
Hmm.
Yeah, that's all. It almost felt a bit thrown in for the sake of it.
Yeah, it seemed like a Hinchcliffe note again. We need something here. We need a bit of bump.
Yeah, it feels almost like something that was there in an earlier version that as the story developed further, it was losing its place a bit. It
Yeah.
didn't really work anymore, but because of how iconic that imagery could be, they wanted to keep it in there, and so it was sort of forced to work with where the story had gone. But I do like moments of it as well. So,
Yeah, it's a good little moment really. And I think the
yeah.
sound design's brilliant for
Mm.
it. It's very immersive.
Goes to Growlstead then. I think it's fair to say that parts 1 to 4 are where the story is at.
Yeah, I'd say so. It's got this wonderful uh atmosphere, I think, to it. I think it's got a lot going on. You've got these grave robbers, very sort of Burke and Hare.
Mm.
And I guess very Holmesian with sort of the double act of them. Um,
Yeah, and Holmesian being Robert Holmes in this case.
yes,
When you're
yes,
talking about Victorian
yeah. You think,
England,
yeah, yeah,
when you say
sure,
Holmesian, you can have
different.
somewhat different connotations there.
Um, yeah, and you've got the sort of romance with Leela and one of the servant
Mm.
characters. Um, yeah, and I think you've got a sort of ghost-like elements there. A sort of
I mean, this makes sense. You got Mark
yeah,
Platt
Mark
right
Platt
in it.
there. You've got,
But,
your creepy nursery rhymes. You've got ghost walking among us, a family curse. There's a lot of, you know, signposting horror elements there already.
mm. And then it sort of all goes a bit weird in part five. You almost have a different story. Part five has its own beginning, middle, and end of sorts. And then you go back to the original story for part six, but you've been away for a bit, and so you sort of feel out of sync with it in a way.
It,
And then it just goes, I still don't even know what
yeah,
happens,
it's
really.
such a bizarre sort of it's tonal whiplash, isn't it?
Yeah.
For no real reason.
It almost feels it's mashing your action figures together
Yeah.
and then going, oh, I'm running out of time here. Let's find a way to wrap this up quick. God, yeah. And it's like that. It keeps trying to go bigger as well, it feels like. I, hmm. It still doesn't work for me. I've listened to it a few times now, and yeah, as much as I enjoy the story for those first four parts, I think there's lots of good to be had in there.
Mhm.
It's very dark. It's probably darker than anything on uh, the TV era for the Hinchcliffe. I feel like it goes to some more gruesome places because it can on audio,
Mm.
but yeah, ultimately it is let down by those last two parts.
I mean, I think, yes, especially, I think, is it part two when you get the main villain killing somebody and you get sort of the doctor dissecting the body of like he's had his skull ripped open and,
Yeah,
it's
some of the
very
descriptions there and the
visceral.
sound design as well.
Yeah.
I love the brotherly dynamic of Edward Scrivener and Cedric Scrivener, uh, who are these two characters who've gone on very different paths in life. And I think it's wonderful how the narrative is sort of split between them, as you've got the Doctor and Leela with Edwards at Grousted House, and then you have your main villain of the story, Mordriga, with Cedric Scrivener at his hospital. And yeah, I think that's quite a nice dynamic that they're playing with there. And the way that's worked into the structure of the story is, I think, quite brilliantly done in those first four parts.
Yeah, I agree.
Yeah. And then, it sort of is all leading to this confrontation between the two. And then the story manages to fizzle out after that, sadly. Overall, it is still a pretty good Halloween listen, I think.
I mean,
You got haunted
yeah,
houses, you got imps and demons.
ghosts.
Yeah, you got a good bit of a gore in there as well.
Yeah, yeah.
Not too strong, but
It's there.
it's certainly there if you want to imagine it.
I mean, that's the beauty of audio. That's the beauty of audio.
I did enjoy going back to these for the most part.
Yeah, I mean,
I
I
think,
really enjoyed going back to Devil's Armada, and I loved
mm,
because I think the first time I listened to it, I didn't realize there was a nice reference to Flame of Cadiz
oh
in
yeah,
here, which obviously, you're talking
that
about
was
the
by
time.
Mark Platt, wasn't it?
Yeah, yeah.
Mm,
You're talking about time jumps. Well, for the Doctor, it was a year when he's had, three different incarnations in that space of that
mm.
year for him since
Yeah, I think that
Cadiz.
was an unnice moment where the Doctor's doing that rousing speech.
Yes, for
It
England.
very, yeah, it very much called back to me to State of Decay, funnily enough. Not a Hinchcliffe story, but
Mm.
one that has Hinchcliffe vibes. I do feel like I've been negative in this review. It's shock horror.
Oh, wow.
But I feel like, you know, it almost it annoys me more that I like huge swathes of these
Yes.
episodes and stories, and then other parts of them let them down so completely. It's really does go from 100 to 0 and back to 100 again.
Hmm.
And it almost confounds me in a way. And, you think you have these amazing scenes and whole chunks, whole episodes that are some of the best that Doctor Who could ever be. And then they're completely let down by other aspects. And yeah, it confounds me that it can be so good and yet have so much disappointing moments at the same time. And I think that makes it even more annoying, I suppose, is the only word that comes to mind for me. I mean, how about you? How are you feeling about the first Phillip Hinchcliffe Presents box set as a
I
whole?
I think there's still an element of nostalgia to it. I think there's still an element of this was a big
Mm,
occasion for Big Finish and
mm,
for my listening journey. So I think there's a soft spot there for it. I think that, like you say, there are flaws within the story, but I think this is the least offensible of the range. I think because
yeah.
there's a style to it, and I think I
You're also
can,
getting two stories in this one, which
yeah.
helps.
So yeah, I think this is the king of that range really, and nothing has topped it.
No, I would say it's been downhill ever since, but it has sort of been up down.
Yeah,
It's,
mainly down, mainly down.
yeah, there's a little bit of a swoop back up again with the Helm of All. But
Yeah.
yeah, let us know all your thoughts down below on Phillip Hinchcliffe Presents as a whole, the first box set in particular, whether or not you think it's the perfect Halloween listen, or if there are other stories which appeal more to you. I mean, I know tonight I will be sticking on at last Torchwood Woodishins.
Mm.
I bought it, it came out right at the start of the month, but I thought, you know what, I'm holding on to this and listen to it Halloween night instead. So, yeah, I mean, we'll get back to you at some point with how that goes down.
Mm.
But until then, please leave a like, subscribe for more, and we'll catch you next time.
Bye.